as women, we will love ourselves based on the conditioning we receive from our parents, in particular our mother, in the first 8 years of life.
The one thing that you have chosen not to tell anyone because of your fear, your guilt, your shame. Bring that to the table and let's see who is strongest here.
And being able to look at the things that we might want to run and hide from, that is the scary inner work. And it's until we do that, but we won't experience true freedom and power within ourselves.
And no matter what happens externally, because you are leading from a place of truth, whatever transpires will always be for the greater good. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode on this amazing series, Unchained Humanity, Talks to Ignite Global Freedom. And today we've got a very special guest with us. Her name is Nikki, right? Essentially, she is a feminine empowerment guide facilitator. She specifically focuses on integrating your mind and your body into the embodiment within self, and really support women towards self-empowerment, self-love, and really living a life of absolute authenticity. So, Nikki, welcome. How are we?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful and excited to be here.
Beautiful. So the first things first, I would love to explore, for everyone who is watching this, it's a lot of the times people enter into personal development and potentially begin on this journey of empowering others. There's always been a journey of pain to purpose, trauma to transformation, wounds to wisdom that come into play. So I would love to know from your journey, how did you come to be on this journey of feminine empowerment? And what were some of the trials and tribulations that have come forth that really caught you into embodying the person that you are now?
So when I was in high school, I was quite the opposite of the embodied feminine light woman you see today and Ray. I was dealing with a lot of unresolved trauma from my early childhood that I wasn't ready to face. And the way that I coped with that, and I feel this is a familiar story for a lot of people when they're in high school and dealing with the complexities of navigating school and finding their true identity in the world. The way I coped with that void was alcohol, partying, a lot of drugs and sex. And for a really long time, I lived in this naivety of partying that I didn't really feel mattered. I was having fun and dealing with the wounding in my own way. And there was sort of this illusion of happiness that a lot of people experience in the party scene. You think you're in this world where you're happy and you're having fun with your friends and everyone's doing the same thing, and so you're happy. But it really is a distorted level of happiness. And everything was fine until I turned 21 and 6 of my friends and I decided to go on holidays. And I want you to picture, we are in Adelaide Airport and I have somehow snuck a beer bong and 2 bottles of raspberry cruisers through security. And we are 5 minutes about to board our plane to depart to Bali. And I am necking with a beer bong these 2 cruisers. So that's kind of like an insight into the level of consciousness that I was dealing with, and I thought everything was fine at 21, living my life this way. So about 3 days into our trip in Bali, we head to 𝗗𝗄𝘃 Island, and it is absolute tropical paradise. And that afternoon, while we are in our private villa, I started to feel really strange, and I thought I might have eaten something funny. You know, 𝗗𝗄𝘃 is a bit of a sketchy island sometimes. It's quite known for mushrooms. So I go to this private restaurant that is just for our villa. And I asked them, did you put something in my mushroom, in my my milkshake? And they said, oh, your friend said, mushroom time, party time for everyone. And my belly sunk, Ray.
Right.
I felt like physically sick. And I confronted this friend of mine to tell him what I found out. And he said, you're crazy. Shut up. Stop being paranoid. And whenever you mix any type of drug with being told you're crazy, it's not a very good
It's a whole
mixture.
distortion.
And that's what happened that night. My reality began to literally dissolve from underneath me, and I slipped into psychosis, and I became stuck in this psychosis trip for 3 whole days.
And what was it like for you in those 3 days? Like, people experience psychosis or have this perception of what psychosis is. How was it like for you in those 3 days? Like, what was the experience like, if you could recall?
It's like being in those escape rooms where you have like 50 clues to figure out first, and every clue you think you figure out that gets you to this grip of reality only brings you to a deeper level of distortion that you can't seem to escape. And at every level, I thought I was figuring out why I was feeling the way I felt. Something completely out of my my expectation came in to prove to me that I had no grip on my reality whatsoever. And the hardest thing was traveling with my 6 friends, and one of them, who the restaurant said, you know, this guy said party time for everyone, was one of my best friends for like 8 or 9 years. So when you put your trust in people and then that's taken from you, you lose sense of what to trust as well. Can I trust my friend? Can I trust what I'm eating? Can I trust the locals in Indonesia? And I felt so alone by the end of those 3 days. And eventually through many attempts of pleading for help from my friends, they turned around at the end of the 3 days and said, right, either you leave this villa, Nikki, or we will, because you're ruining this holiday.
Wow, hectic.
So I obviously, said, take me to a hospital, and they ended up sedating me, and I woke up in a Balinese psych ward. No phone, no passport, no money, no identification. I had no idea when or if my friends were coming to get me. My legs were covered in blood, and I wasn't even in clothes that I recognized. And I just laid there staring at the ceiling thinking, how in the hell did I get here?
Yeah.
And it was like the universe was like, it's time for you to take a long look in the mirror, sister. And I did. I was like, holy shit, Nikki, those are the friends you've been hanging out with. What does that say about you? And I started to see my friends for who they truly were. But more powerfully, Ray, I saw myself for who I had been for many years. And it was like the shadow had finally revealed itself. And I needed to go to the darkest place at rock bottom for that veil to dissolve and for me to see reality for the first time and like really wake up.
It's a fascinating thing, right? Like, I'm curious, do you still have any form of contact with those friends of the past?
Not anymore. When I came back to Adelaide to do my healing journey, they made a lot of attempts to reach out to me. And I think they wanted to know what my story was. And I couldn't hold on to this connection. I couldn't see them as friends anymore after the lack of care that they had for a friend in need in that moment. And I used to get phone calls from them at 3 a.m. being like, "You're psychotic. We hope you get the help you need." And it really confirmed to me, like, these are not your people. These are not your tribe. They're not your friends.
Yeah. It's so intriguing, especially when we're young. We find so many things to take us away from the reality that we're not confronting within ourselves, right? Especially when we're young, and we use aspects like alcohol, drugs, sex to really avoid looking at ourselves and what we're missing within. So for you specifically, in terms of all of these addictives, let's talk a little bit about sex, right? From a male point of view, I have received different expressions from people who have been through this journey of, escaping through sex and then coming back to themselves and then realizing the sacredness and the sanctity of sex. From the feminine's point of view, what was it about sex that allowed you that gave you the escape you were looking for? And how did that journey transpire when it comes to your relationship with that?
When I was a teenager, sex was a form of control. Being able to have power over men gave me a false sense of, I'm in control here. I later realized through healing that what I was deeply seeking, which was freedom within my body, I was actually giving away, because now my power came from outside of me and I needed to seek it in relationships with men. So although it was something that I did as a teenager to, in a way, it was like a part of survival. Like, I feel like there's this deep emptiness, there's a deep void. I'm deeply seeking to feel loved and have control here, right? So I was doing the best as, any 15 or 16-year-old would at that time, at that level of consciousness. But as I've gone obviously through my healing and really began to connect with my womb and my sexuality, I've been able to return that control and my source of power back from within.
And what was the biggest void that you had, that you perceived sex could be an escape route or almost like a mechanism that can allow you to feel free from that void or feel free from that insecurity? Like, what was the most present for you specifically?
When I was a teenager, you mean?
Yeah.
It all came back to love. I really feel that as women, we will love ourselves based on the conditioning we receive from our parents, in particular our mother, in the first 8 years of life, based on her level of consciousness and her devotion and relationship with her own heart and her own feminine essence. And I had a very sacrificial mother. So she directed a lot of her energy outwards. Let me control everything outside of me, be a people pleaser, be the martyr, be the sacrificial lamb, put everyone else before myself. And that way I'm a good mom. I'm worthy of love. I'm a good parent. And so that really instilled in me, Ray, that from the beginning, it wasn't how mom loved me. It was what I saw in how she loved herself.
Yeah, it's so powerful. It's so intriguing because from what I've experienced personally as well, when it comes to the mother and the father. And I was having a conversation with a subconscious facilitator that I was engaging with. And she was literally moving through my energetic field to really identify some of the core limitations that I'm still holding on to that's preventing me from living my fullest expression and fullest expansiveness of life. And as she was moving through the energetic field, she was like, 15 years old, nope. 7 years old, nope. 1 year old, nope. The day you were born. And it was so intriguing. She said this, because I perceive like your mom and your father, your mother and your father, your mother as the symbol of unconditional love, almost like the reflection of what unconditional love truly means. And your father is almost like the reflection of what true discerning leadership really means, right? So when I was literally born, what I received from, like, my mom felt unworthy the day I was born. So I immediately took on the belief that to be in unconditional love meant that I was unworthy. And that has literally played out in all of my past relationships because of this unworthiness to be in, number one, unconditional self-love, and number two, in unconditional love with another, that creates all of these insecurities of not being worthy enough, not being good enough. And because I'm not good enough to experience this love, then the human just wants to control this love instead of allowing that love to flow freely, right? Which has manifested in various ways in my past relationships. And this is the thing when it comes to our relationship with the mother and the relationship with the father. There's nuances to that we need to explore, and we get to explore in those ways. Based on your observations and experiences working with so many different women from all walks of life, what have you come to realize as the most common or most prevalent borrowed belief or conditioning that prevents the feminine from truly being in a state of embodiment and truly receiving all that life has to offer?
I've been working with women for the past 4 years to understand and analyze why we are the way we are. I am deeply fascinated by work like Carl Jung and really deeply fascinated by neuroscience, in particular Dan Siegel, Bessel van der Kolk, Dick Schwartz, all really pioneering psychology and neuroscience. And along the journey, one of the things that I really believed that women were experiencing that led to this internal demise was the shared feeling of not enoughness. Through my experience, I've actually come to realize, Ray, that the biggest thing that women really suffer with is not necessarily that they feel that they're not enough, but they know that they're capable of so much more. And they believe that it's unsafe for them to be fully expressed in the world as the woman they want to be. And so there's been this really beautiful journey of experiential wisdom, which cannot be found in a textbook or a podcast. We really need to go through our own vulnerable growth, our own breaking down of triggers and shadows to find like these little gems of wisdom. And for me, it's been, wow, Nikki, you need to learn that it's safe for you to show up as a fully embodied feminine woman in this world, because that is what women are really craving.
Yeah, that's so profound, because think about this. Even in your expression of that not enoughness and that unworthiness, we begin to realize that whether it's the feminine, whether it's the masculine has the same nuance as well. It just manifests in a very different expression, right? For the feminine, it's the ability to express their voice, to fully express themselves in all the ways that they choose to and feel safe in doing so. For the masculine, it's the same, being able to express your emotions, to cry, to come back into self, and at the same time feel safe doing so. So we begin to realize that there is not too much of a difference on an energetic level in terms of the masculine or the feminine, and there is no need for us to either beat down on the masculine or beat down on the feminine, or try to find differences among those both and trying to solidify those differences, because in so many ways, the things that we are actually wanting the most of at the end of the day is to feel safe, is to feel accepted, is to feel loved, right? So this conflict that we're experiencing, right, whether it's the feminist culture or like this whole masculine thing, patriarchal thing, it's all coming down to one root fucking cause, which is you're not fully expressing yourself. You're not allowing yourself to be all that you are. You are either betraying parts of yourself, and I call that sometimes micro betrayers. Like, it's those things that you say yes, even though you want to say no. You say no, even though you want to say yes. And it can be so small on a day-to-day things. It can be those like little micro betrayers that stacks up over time to create this whole repressed aspect of your being that leads to an implosion or an explosion. And that's where murders are created, suicides are resulted in, right? And as we have experienced, recently the whole situation in Sydney, it's all through repression. It's all through that need to fully express themselves. And sometimes people do not, because of the lack of understanding of the emotions and where they come from and what channel, what outlet to transmute the emotions into, it creates a very chaotic outburst, right? That actually creates way more harm than good. So in your experience, when it comes to the expression of yourself in all the ways, how do you go about doing that? And how does one actually come into a place where they're unconditionally themselves, but yet not coming from a place of anger, right? Not coming from a place of hurt, but coming from a place of love, and they still can be unapologetically themselves.
Right. We really need to learn how to embrace all of our, for lack of a better word, our shit.
Yeah, I exactly agree.
Have you seen the movie 8 Mile by Eminem?
No, actually.
Yeah, so Eminem stars, he plays himself in the movie
Cool.
8 Mile. And at the start of the movie, he goes to a rap battle. And in rap battles, they pick out each other's insecurities and imperfections and things that they could pay out in each other, and they use it as ammunition against each other in the rap battle. And Eminem at the start of the movie gets up and he goes to rap in front of this huge crowd and he chokes. Right, his throat chakra closes up and he walks off the stage being laughed at as like this embarrassment that he didn't have the power to speak truth and get up in front of it and be himself. And anyways, the movie continues and it shows his journey of going through his own valley of despair and his hardship in life. And it goes to the end of the movie where he gets in front of the same crowd. And there's this defining moment where he goes inwards and he realizes something about the power of vulnerability. And the power that he discovered was when he took his own vulnerabilities and all the things that might hold shame or guilt or judgment that everyone else could use as ammunition against him, and he rapped on it and he spoke it, that it no longer had power over him. And so when it came to his opponent's turn, who was ready to pick apart all of his insecurities, Eminem had already said, yeah, I live in a trailer with my mom, I'm broke. And his opponent was dumbfounded because he had nothing, no power. And, like that was his true success there. And obviously he went on, that was the start of his career, and he's an incredible, iconic rapper that we know today. And the same is true for our journey in our embodiment, whether you're a man, a conscious man, or a conscious woman, until you are able to get to a place in your journey where you are able to take your shit, your imperfections, and the things that you hold deep shame and guilt towards, and be able to bring them up to the surface and start to see them as a part of your experiential wisdom as a human being on this planet, on this earth, it will always have power over you. People want to go and live powerful lives and do powerful things, and it requires doing very empowered work, which is working with our shadows and being able to look at the things that we might want to run and hide from, that is the scary inner work. And it's until we do that where we won't experience true freedom and power within ourselves.
So true in there. A question that was reflected to me that really shed the mask of almost like we always have this identities that we construct of ourselves. These identities that we create in order to feel safe in the world, in order to feel validated in the world, in order to feel loved by the world. And these identities begin to serve as a mask that prevents everyone else from actually acknowledging and seeing the truth of who you are. And I remember I received this question in the mirror that was my previous relationship, and it was very, very profound. And this question that was reflected to me was, your truth will set us free. Your truth will set us free. And it's so powerful because last night I was having a conversation with a couple of friends over dinner, after my workshop and everything, and we were just chatting. And they were asking me, how was my journey and how did I arrive at a place of unconditional self-love in so many aspects? Like, what was the journey like? What was the secret? Like, how do you stay grounded no matter what happens? And I told them this: ultimate power is ultimate vulnerability. When I go into a room and I have a conversation and I'm able to stand here and own all parts of myself and go, we can talk about the achievements and stuff like that and blah, blah, blah. But what if I ask you this question? What is the one truth, the one thing that you have chosen not to tell anyone because of your fear, your guilt, your shame? Bring that to the table and let's see who is strongest here. And in that expression, it created such a beautiful space of each individual leaning to the depths of what they perceive their current state of vulnerability is, and sharing an aspect of themselves that nobody has ever heard before in various ways. And it was so beautiful to witness the energy ripple around the conversation, and as we were sharing different parts of ourselves, to see that in a space where no matter who you were in the past, it is held, it is acknowledged, it is seen, it is loved, and now it gets to be released. It no longer holds control over you. The moment you can look someone in the eyes, no matter what happens, and express your deepest, darkest shadows, that's when you know you have power over self, because no matter what the external reaction and response is, you, in your truth, will always lead to self-trust, self-love to a profound level that no matter what happens externally, you will also call in the people who see you for all that you are and everything that you are becoming, and acknowledging the guilt, the shame, the fear that you held in the past and seeing that through. Of course, we need to take radical responsibility. You can't just say something, but you don't take responsibility of your past, then it defeats the purpose, right? But in the acknowledgement of that, that's when you actually find a deeper energetic of acceptance and love and forgiveness in all the ways. But it starts with you leading yourself in vulnerability. So from your experience, what is vulnerability to you? And why is that so important for the work that you're doing and for the embodiment that people get to receive? Like, what is it really? What is vulnerability?
I truly feel that vulnerability is being able to honor the polarities of all of our experiences as humans. We live in a digital world where it is so easy to share all the really good and polished and well put together sides of ourselves that everyone will love and like. But it's when we truly show up to reveal the parts of ourselves that maybe aren't so polished and well put together that we actually draw in more true connections, because they're based off the foundation of truth. And when we look at falsehood or truth, truth is always going to be governed by a higher level of power and love than what we think other people think we should be showing in the world. And it turns out that when we do it, even though the mind says, but what if they judge you and then reject you and you end up alone? It never happens, because people go, wow, it's so relatable for me to see sides of you or hear a story about your past that makes me feel that I can reveal these parts within myself that I've held a lot of shame or guilt around. And so the mind often creates these fears, and typically it's the ego that says, but I want everyone to like me, so let me just show these really filtered parts of myself I can control. But when we learn to drop the shield that I'm all love and light and I've got my shit together, and we show these darker, really real shadow aspects of ourselves, it allows us to show all the truth of who we are and our experiences. And vulnerability requires that. We cannot be vulnerable and just show these filtered aspects of ourselves that feel good to share. It requires being able to show the repressed parts and maybe shameful parts of ourselves and bring them up into love by casting them out with truth and acceptance. And, Brené Brown talks so beautifully about how shame only has power over us when we keep it in silence. And when we actually speak shame out loud, it ceases to have power over us because shame loves to thrive in silence. And so our journeys into vulnerability requires a lot of courage. And the courage is, I need to drop the ego that wants to be liked and loved by everyone and actually risk the courage to be disliked, knowing that on the other side of that, I am stepping into a true, authentic expression of myself and weaving the pathway of vulnerability so that I can actually create real connections with people. So many people, Ray, say, oh, it's so hard to make real connections with people. It's so hard to find people that are real and vulnerable. And I say to my clients all the time, you need to go first. You cannot wait for people to be the bid for courage and display their vulnerability. You need to, as Mahatma Gandhi says, you've got to be the change you want to see in the world. If you want to attract conscious individuals who can access vulnerability, truth, unconditional love, and hold you in your shadows, you need to be able to display that level of vulnerability and holding yourself in those shadows and showing people that and revealing that to them. And it gives them permission to be able to return that. And if they're not ready for it and they're not on that journey, then you can be able to attune to calling in and attracting people at that level, because now you're being that vibrational frequency. So you will then attract those people. So it requires that courage to go first.
100%. And this is the thing. And this is me speaking specifically when it comes to the masculine. And I would love to hear your reflections on this. It is this. I remember a conversation, and essentially I was experiencing conflicts with my previous partner. And I remember this situation where, because back then, before I go into that relationship specifically, I didn't believe in love. It was conditional love to varying degrees. It was like distorted perception of love. And I remember she said something along the lines of, why do I feel as though I'm always the one leading in vulnerability first? Why do I feel as though I'm always the one who needs to open the space first to be vulnerable before you can? I want someone who's able to lead me in vulnerability as well. And when she said that, what really landed for me was this: the distorted perception and the idea of a man. It goes into, you feel as though you're a man only if you are strong, only if you are outspoken, only if you're confident, all of these masculine traits, blah, blah, blah. But then you're less of a man if you display gentleness, if you display emotions, if you do all of that. That came into play. And then I began to realize, if unconditional love is all there is, it's the most profound emotion one can experience in this human experience, then why am I choosing to conditionally lead based upon a distorted perception of an idea of what a successful man should be, instead of leading unconditionally, whether it's feminine traits or masculine traits, leading in vulnerability, leading in gentleness, leading in softness, leading in those aspects that allow the feminine to be led, to receive, to be open in all the ways. And that's exactly that. If you want to create a reality that you truly desire, it requires you to step into that space of full devotion and full openness and full vulnerability, knowing that because you are strong enough psychologically that you've got you, which requires, of course, a lot of introspection and radical responsibility, then no matter what happens externally, because you are leading from a place of truth, whatever transpires will always be for the greater good. So, in that being said, how do you feel about sharing something perhaps you've never shared to anyone before? I'll share something. This is something that I don't think a lot of people have received, haven't heard me express to anyone else. And it was this. When I was 21, so that's probably 8, 9 years ago, I was in a long distance relationship. So I was in Australia, she was in Singapore, and we really tried to make things work. However, I had that belief of if I choose unconditional love, if I choose vulnerability, it means that I'm worthy. So there were so many moments in that relationship where I sought to control her actions, control her behaviors, because of my own insecurity that if she thrives in that way or whatever way that she chooses to, I will lose her because I'm unworthy of love. So how can someone like her love me? And since she does, I need to literally control her so that the love never goes away. So that was what I didn't know consciously then. I was just reacting however I reacted, not even understanding where those emotions were coming from and so on and so forth. But that was where I was at. And we tried to make things work. And there was this period of time where the conflicts and the chaos that was created from my actions and my need for control and all of that created so much dissonance and chaos that I felt so unloved, so unworthy, so full of fear that I'm going to lose all of this, that I escaped into I wouldn't like perhaps infidelity in various ways, like a dishonoring of our connection. And I received a message on Facebook Messenger, something along those. I can't remember the channel. And it was this hot chick, and she was wanting to, catch up, have a conversation via Zoom and so on and so forth. And I was like, my relationship isn't working. Why not? I was desperately looking for love. I was desperately looking for some form of acceptance, some form of love, some distorted perception of love I was looking for because I wasn't receiving it from the relationship. And I entertained her and we jumped on Zoom and we had sexual plays on Zoom. And what turned out in that experience was the fact that she turned out to be a scammer. So I had this whole recording of me online and she threatened to send it to all of my Facebook friends. It became a whole thing. And immediately I shut down. I was in fear. I was like, what the fuck have I done? Right? And in that experience, what really landed for me was the fact that because I was choosing to betray myself, because I was choosing to betray what's currently present for me, all of this transpired because of my betrayal of self. And for such a long time, I had so much shame with regards to that, not being able to express it because of my idea of what a man should be. But when I began to own that truth, when I began to own that shame and allow it to simply be a learning point and a lesson that transpired in the past for me to come back closer to love, it no longer feels heavy or dense or something that has power over me. Because there is a possibility that whatever clip of me could be running over the internet right now, who the fuck knows? Right? But in the expression of that, in the ownership of that, in the acknowledgement of that, it dissolves in my psyche. And knowing that no matter what happens moving forward, it's all good. I'm all sorted. So that is my piece. And that's something I probably have never really expressed on a public audience before.
And just honoring you for your ability to be courageous and show other men why being able to be a true pillar of leadership is so important. It's such an attractive trait and quality about the masculine because it shows women that there is holding and that they're able to be received at that level of depth.
Yes.
And it's such a testament to the amount of growth that you've done since navigating your relationship with your ex, where she was saying, you know, why is it that I'm always the one instigating the vulnerability here? So it's such a testament of your growth and how you've been able to go from not initiating vulnerability to this really beautiful place of masculine leadership where you can create that space and experience it within yourself. But I can imagine create that space for other conscious men to see what it looks like and experience that power and be able to work with their own shame pieces, but also for women to feel safe in that presence. So just honoring you.
Fully received.
I got so lost in your sharing that I forgot your initial question.
Perfect. Yeah, so the exploration factor is, and the discussion that we get to have is there any part of you that perhaps there's something that has power over you right now? Maybe a shame, a guilt, a fear that you have not expressed to anyone else, or you've not expressed publicly, or it's not known anywhere else that you would love to share, that you would love to dissolve, that you would love to resolve in the sharing of that?
Yeah, there's a lot of shadows that I've been working to explore since my own navigating of a breakup only a few months ago, back in September, depending on when you're listening to this. And I've gone on this journey of healing a lot of my relationship attachment styles. And I really gave myself this identity that I was a class A avoidant in relationships. And it led to a lot of shame and guilt, feeling that I didn't have the capacity to truly love someone. And that there was this part of me that wanted to shut down and run away and hide all of the things that she feared somebody might be able to use as power or ammunition over me. And for that teen who grew up and her survival was based around needing control, that was tremendously scary in my relationship with my ex. And there were a lot of moments, particularly in the last 4 months of our relationship, where I began to withhold a lot of my truth because there was so much fear of losing my control, and the fear that if I were to speak about the complexities of my shadows and my wounding and my past and my trauma, that I wouldn't be met with the holding and the safety that the little girl within me was deeply seeking. And you know what I will share on this space, and what I do feel comfortable to bring into a public setting with the relationship I had with my ex, is I only 2 weeks ago met a really vulnerable part of my wounding. And it blindsided me because I'd cast this perception that I was an avoidant in relationships. And I met this wounding of mine. She's 7 years old. She's sort of like a part of me. If no one's done parts work in this space, it's called internal family system. It's a experiential neuroscience model. And so I met this part of me. It's sort of like, you can think of it as like a sub personality, and these parts get burdened and trapped in the age where they experience their wounding. And what was happening is the avoidant was actually protecting this 7-year-old. So the avoidant was, I'm going to push the fear, the vulnerability as a form of control so that I can protect 7-year-old little Nikki. And as I started to work with the avoidant shadow and this more vulnerable part came through, her view of love, Ray, so distorted. And it made me feel like I had been lied to about love my whole childhood, and that I felt like I had no fucking idea how to truly love. That's what that part of me felt, at least.
Yeah, of course.
And being able to work with this little wounding part made me realize that I, in the initial stages of the breakup, really blamed my ex for his lack of ability to create a safe space for me. Like, the masculine needs to be a strong pillar of safety, and that's why I couldn't talk about my wounding. But everything is always, always a mirror. Just like 𝗶𝗲𝘆 was a mirror. She said, hey, wake up. Time to see what you don't want to see.
Yeah, exactly.
I was able to see that I was creating my own self-fulfilling prophecy from the lens of this little girl who deep down was desperately seeking love, but only doing it based on the wounding that she experienced when she was 7.
Honoring you in experiencing all of that, in leaning in choosing you, in choosing the love, in choosing to witness yourself in the pain that was, and stepping from that with a place of sovereignty, strength, and most of all, radical responsibility. And that's one thing that it's so pivotal in today's world, the need for radical responsibility to take full ownership of your past, your present, your future, and begin to really decide how do you truly, and I mean truly, want to live your life. That's one of the most profound things for someone to actually acknowledge and honor. So, Nikki, final question. If I have a mic right now, and this mic is a magical, wondrous mic, where the moment you speak into it, every single soul will receive that message in this world. The moment you speak into that, every single soul will receive the message. What would you love to give them?
Dear world, my fellow lovers, be more kind to yourself. Spend time looking in the mirror with loving, accepting eyes. Spend more time bringing love back in rather than punishment. Spend more time looking at the world through eyes of beauty, finding beauty in everything around you, in everything that you do, because one day you'll look back and you'll go, wow, there was so much beauty and I wasted it trying to be perfect. I wasted it punishing myself into a box that I thought everyone else thought I should be, rather than just being who I truly wanted to. So when you wake up tomorrow morning and you look in the mirror, give yourself some more love and grace. You're doing so well. You are so hard on yourself, and you deserve so much love and compassion.
Wow, wow, wow. That was a transmission. A heartgasm in itself.
My nipples are a little bit hard now.
Welcome to the tantric experience of life. Full immersion of life itself.
I thought that one came from my heart, but I think it came from a little bit lower.
all bases from the root chakra all the way to the heart chakra to the throat from the crown. That was a transmission. For those of you who are listening, what a gift this life we get to live, this world we get to experience. Question for you. How would life look so different if you decide to live every moment, every choice from a place of deep, authentic truth? Consider that for a moment. Full life immersion. I'm very sure we'll have another episode talking about, I know you're on this current journey of integrating tantric practices in terms of like really making love to life, making love to life itself. We'll dive right in because that is full life immersion. So I'm very sure we can get into another episode on that. But such a pleasure, Nikki, such a honor to have this conversation, really for you to share from such a deep place of vulnerability. If, let's say, anyone is wanting to learn more about your work, learn more about who you are, how can they find you?
Come find me on the gram, Nikki Casa, which is NIKKICASSA. And then if you are in Australia and you are craving a conscious space as a woman, I highly recommend coming to my 2-day immersion experience at the end of the year in September 28th and 29th in the Gold Coast. It is not a personal development event. It is something even better than that. It is an experiential space of love, unity, beauty, wisdom, transformation, and such a safe space for women to come together and learn to experience this work and get into their bodies and experience deep, deep transformation.
Epic, authentic, impactful sisterhood. So yeah, I'll drop Nikki's details in the description down below, right? Such a pleasure, such an honor. And I will see each and every single one of you on the next episode. Peace.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode and believe in our mission to create a positive impact in the world, hit that subscribe button so you never miss our epic content. If it inspired you, share on social media. Imagine the ripple effect we could create together. Don't forget to tag me using my social media handles in the description below. We have some mind-blowing episodes coming up that you won't want to miss. Together, let's create a wave of change. Stay curious, stay inspired, and I'll see you in the next one.